I woke up and chose the billionaire CEO, now my childhood sweetheart, lives in regret. The billionaire's 15-year regret, the 4 children he never knew. His voice was a ghost, a whisper lost on the wind that rustled the leaves of a tired-looking maple tree. Julia, are they? The woman standing before him, a woman he hadn't seen in 15 years, didn't flinch. Her eyes, which once held a universe of adoration for him, were now cold, hard stones. Are they what, Connor? Are they a board meeting you can reschedule? A deal you can walk away from? His breath hitched. The question he needed to ask felt like swallowing glass. Are they mine? She held his gaze, her chin high, a silent testament to a strength he never knew she possessed. The world seemed to stop spinning. The laughter of children from inside the modest community center faded into a dull hum. There was only her, him, and the chasm of 15 years between them. She finally spoke, and the 7 words she uttered were not a confession. They were a judgment. I have 4 children you've never met. Connor swayed, his hand instinctively reaching for the porch railing to steady himself. The air left his lungs in a silent rush. 4. The word echoed in the sudden vast emptiness of his soul. 4. Her final words were the blow that shattered his world completely. Yes, they're yours. All 4 of them. Connor Hamilton, the tech CEO who could make markets tremble with a single press release, stood on that rickety porch, a bankrupt man. He had just discovered a debt he could never repay. Have you ever made a mistake so big you thought you could never fix it? A choice that haunts you in the quiet moments, a ghost that sits at the edge of your bed while you sleep? What if you were given a second chance you never, ever deserved? Connor Hamilton was a man who had everything, billions of dollars, a tech empire that touched every corner of the globe, and a name that commanded respect and fear in equal measure. But on a sunny Tuesday afternoon, standing before the woman he had abandoned, he discovered he was bankrupt in the only currency that truly matters: time. Can a man who abandoned his past buy it back with the fortune he built in its place? And would the family he broke ever allow him to become the father he was always meant to be? Stick with us to find out. Hello, beautiful family, and welcome to Cedar Drama. If you believe in the power of second chances and the unwavering strength of a mother's love, let us know by hitting that like button right now. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to you. Now, let's begin. The day had started like any other in Connor Hamilton's meticulously curated life. The sun rose over the city, casting long, dramatic shadows between the skyscrapers, but inside his penthouse, the light was different. It was a cool, sterile, automated glow. His apartment wasn't a home. It was an architectural statement on the 87th floor, a monument to success built of glass, chrome, and Italian marble. The silence in the penthouse was a physical presence, broken only by the distant, almost imperceptible hum of the city far below. He sat at the head of a 12-foot slab of polished Nero Marchina marble, a single plate and a single glass his only companions. He sipped his lukewarm coffee. Its bitter taste mirrored the regret that occasionally visited him in these quiet moments. 15 years of relentless, all-consuming work had built his empire, Tech Fusion. It had made him a legend. Yet, something vital, something essential, was missing. Success felt hollow when there was no one to share it with. He looked out the floor-to-ceiling window at the sprawling metropolis below. It was his kingdom. He owned a piece of nearly every skyline he could see, but he felt like a king ruling over an empty castle. Another day, another dollar, he muttered to himself. The old phrase, his father, a mechanic with grease permanently etched into the lines of his hands, used to say. For his father, it had been a statement of weary survival. For Connor, it had become a cynical reminder of how far he'd come, and how little it all meant. He stood, his bare feet cold on the polished stone floor, and walked to the window. The city was waking up, a million tiny lights of cars creating rivers of gold on the dark asphalt. A million stories starting their day, and he was utterly, profoundly alone. His phone buzzed on the counter, a reminder. 9 a.m. Board meeting. Q. 3 projections. He felt nothing. No excitement. No pressure. Just a dull sense of obligation. An hour later, Connor descended in his private, whisper-quiet elevator. He was perfectly dressed in a custom Italian suit that cost more than the car his father had driven his entire life. His armor. The man the world saw was flawless, confident, and unwavering. The man inside was a ghost, haunting a beautifully tailored suit. His driver, Michael, waited at the curb, the door of the sleek black sedan already open. Michael had been with him for 8 years, a quiet, constant presence who had seen Connor at his most powerful and in the silent rides home after hollow victories at his most empty. "Good morning, Mr. Hamilton," Michael said, his voice respectful and calm. "Morning, Michael. Riverfront offices today. Board meeting at 9. As the luxury sedan glided through the morning traffic, a silent cocoon insulating him from the noisy, messy world outside, Connor scrolled through emails on his tablet. Mergers, acquisitions, stock projections, the language of his life. A notification from a local news app popped up on his screen. Local hero. Single mother successfully raises quadruplets against all odds. Normally, he ignored these. They were digital noise, irrelevant to his world. But a familiar name jumped out at him, a name he hadn't let himself think about for a decade and a half. Julia Parker. The headline alone made him pause, a strange, forgotten ache stirring in his chest. His Julia, a local hero. But it was the accompanying photo that froze the blood in his veins and stopped the world on its axis. There she was, older of course, but just as beautiful. Her smile, the one that used to be reserved just for him, was now directed at the 4 teenagers surrounding her. His finger, which had signed billion-dollar contracts without a tremor, now shook as he enlarged the image. 2 boys, 2 girls, all around 15 years old, all with his jawline, his smile, all with his distinctive deep green eyes. He couldn't breathe. The meticulously constructed walls of his life crumbled to dust in an instant. The air in the car suddenly felt thick, suffocating. He stared at the 4 faces. A son who looked like a younger, less hardened version of himself. Another son with Julia's softer features but his intense gaze. A daughter who was the spitting image of her mother, but with his eyes. And another girl, quieter, standing slightly apart, watching the camera with an artist's observant stillness. "Michael," Connor's voice cracked. A sound so foreign and broken it startled them both. "Sir?" Change of plans. He tore his eyes from the screen, his heart a wild drum against his ribs. "Take me to Hope Haven Community Center, on Elm Street." Michael glanced at him in the rearview mirror, his professional calm momentarily broken by a flicker of concern. "Sir, the board meeting." "Cancel it." Connor could barely hear his own voice over the thundering in his ears. He fumbled to type a message to his assistant, his fingers clumsy and unresponsive. "Family emergency." Family emergency. The words felt foreign on his tongue. He had no family. He had made sure of that. Not since... The memories flooded back, sharp and unwelcome. Julia's voice on the phone 15 years ago. She was crying. He was pacing in the cramped, rented office of his fledgling startup, staring at a whiteboard covered in code, his mind consumed by the first major investment deal that would make or break him. "I'm pregnant, Connor," she had said, her voice thick with a mixture of fear and hope. He had understood the word, pregnant, but in his youthful arrogance, his blinding ambition, he saw it not as a miracle, but as an obstacle, a complication, a threat to the empire he was so desperate to build. "I can't do this right now, Julia," he'd said, his tone clipped and dismissive. "The timing is all wrong. The company is everything right now. Maybe after it takes off." He'd made the worst decision of his life, and he'd made it in under 30 seconds. To solve the problem, he did what he was best at. He threw money at it. He transferred a large sum to her account, assuming that would be the end of it. Days later, divorce papers arrived. He signed them without contesting, without even calling her, believing he was doing what was best for both of them. He was setting her free. That's what he told himself. He was being noble. But now, staring at the 4 faces on his screen, the lie he had built his life upon was exposed. Had she said she was carrying multiple babies? Had he been so monstrously self-absorbed that he had missed that crucial, life-altering detail? Or had she not known herself at that early stage? The questions swirled in his mind, each one another crack in his shattered reality. The car pulled up to a modest two-story brick building. Hope Haven Community Center read a simple wooden sign. The sound of children's laughter, bright and carefree, drifted from an open window. It sounded like a foreign language. "Wait here," Connor told Michael, his voice a hoarse whisper. His legs felt unsteady as he stepped onto the sidewalk. The suit, his armor, suddenly felt like a costume. He was an imposter here. A vibrant mural decorated one wall of the center. It depicted children of all races, holding hands, stretching across a rainbow bridge. It was a world of connection, of community, a world he had actively chosen to live without. He approached the entrance, his heart hammering against his ribs so hard he thought it might break. Through the open glass doors, he saw a small gathering in the main room, a celebration. Balloons were tied to chairs, and a large banner read, "Congratulations, Julia, Community Leader of the Year." And there she was, Julia. She moved among the guests with a practiced, easy grace, her smile warm and genuine as she spoke with families and community members. She looked different, yet achingly the same. Her blonde hair was shorter now, brushing her shoulders instead of cascading down her back in the waves he used to run his fingers through. Laugh lines, beautiful lines, framed her eyes. Eyes that had once looked at him with such unconditional love. She wore simple jeans and a Hope Haven t-shirt, a universe away from the sharp corporate attire she'd worn when they first met. He froze, his feet rooted to the spot. He should leave, turn around, get back in the car, and pretend he never saw any of this. He could fly to another continent, bury himself in work, and forget those four faces, forget those green eyes. But he couldn't. It was too late. The damage was done. The truth was out, and it was staring him in the face. Before he could retreat or advance, a teenage boy appeared in the doorway. He was tall and lanky, with a head of unruly dark hair and a familiar, stubborn set to his jaw. His green eyes, so startlingly like Connor's own, widened with curious intensity as they landed on the stranger in the expensive suit. "Can I help you?" the boy asked. His voice was deepening but not yet fully matured, cracking slightly on the last word. Connor opened his mouth, but no words emerged. His entire vocabulary, the arsenal of words he used to command boardrooms and charm investors, had vanished. This was his son, his flesh and blood. The boy had his jawline and Julia's nose, a perfect, painful combination of them both. "Noah? Who are you talking to?" A girl appeared beside the boy. She was followed by two more teenagers, another boy, and a girl. Quadruplets. The living, breathing proof of his greatest failure. They all stopped and stared at him. Four pairs of his own green eyes, looking at him with a mixture of curiosity and confusion. Connor swayed slightly, the world tilting on its axis. I'm looking for Julia Parker. Minus. Because live. Minus. Minus. Minus live. Minus live. Minus live. Minus live. Minus live. "Mom," called the second boy, a bit shorter and stockier than the first, turning back toward the room. "Someone's here for you." Julia appeared behind her children, wiping her hands on a small towel. Her smile was still on her face from a previous conversation, but it vanished the instant she saw him. The towel slipped from her fingers, fluttering silently to the floor. Connor. His name escaped her lips as barely a whisper, a puff of air, a ghost of a sound. "Hello, Julia." Connor's voice trembled, betraying the iron control he prided himself on. "It's been a long time." The four teenagers looked from their mother's pale, shocked face to the tall stranger, the air crackling with a tension they didn't understand but could feel in their bones. "Kids," Julia said, her voice strained but miraculously controlled. "Could you please go help Mrs. Chen with the refreshments? I need to speak with this gentleman." "But Mom," began one of the girls, the one who looked most like Julia. "Please, Mia, just for a few minutes." Julia's tone was quiet, but left no room for argument. The children reluctantly retreated, casting curious glances over their shoulders. Julia stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind her, creating a fragile barrier between her past and her present. Her composure was remarkable, but Connor could see the slight betraying tremor in her hands. "What are you doing here, Connor?" she asked, her voice low and tight. "I saw the article." He managed, his throat dry. "The news app. About you and the quadruplets." His voice caught. He gestured vaguely toward the door they had just disappeared behind. He couldn't bring himself to ask the question directly. She didn't make him. Her face was a mask of stone, but her eyes were a turbulent sea of emotions he couldn't begin to decipher. Anger, hurt, and something that looked terrifyingly like 15 years of pain. And that's when she delivered the first blow. "Are they what? Connor? Are they a board meeting you can reschedule? A deal you can walk away from?" He flinched, as if struck. "No, Julia, I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," she corrected, her voice slicing through the air. "There's a difference." He finally found the courage to ask, "Are they mine?" She held his gaze, and for a moment, he saw the heartbroken girl he had left behind, before the steel curtain of motherhood and survival slammed back down. "I have 4 children you've never met," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Yes, they're yours, all 4 of them." He leaned against the porch railing for support, his multi-$1,000 suit feeling cheap and ridiculous. "4," he whispered, the word a prayer and a curse. Why didn't you tell me?" For the first time, fire flashed in her eyes. It was a righteous, beautiful, terrifying inferno. "Oh, I did," she said, her voice dripping with the ice of a long-nursed wound. "I did tell you. On the phone. I said I'm pregnant. And you, the great Connor Hamilton, were too busy becoming a tech mogul to listen. You were too busy charting your path to glory to hear the terror and the hope in my voice. And then you sent money. Like I was a problem to be solved, an invoice to be paid. You made it abundantly clear you wanted no part of it, no part of Time's Us, asterisk." "I never knew there were 4 of them," Connor whispered, the defense sounding pathetic even to his own ears. Julia let out a short, bitter, humorless laugh. "And would it have made a difference? Really, Connor? Tell me the truth. 1 child wasn't worth staying for. Would 4 have changed your mind? Or would it have just been 4 times the liability on your precious 5-year plan?" Her words cut him to the bone because they were true. He had no answer. He had no defense. He had been a coward. A selfish, ambitious coward who had traded a family for an empire, and he was only now realizing the staggering poverty of that bargain. He looked down at his polished shoes, unable to meet her gaze. "What are their names?" he asked, his voice barely audible. For a moment, he thought she wouldn't answer. Then her expression softened almost imperceptibly, the mother in her overriding the wounded woman. "Noah is the oldest, by 2 minutes," she said softly. "Then Mia, Lucas, and Ava." Noah, Mia, Lucas, and Ava. The names were like notes of a song he should have known his whole life. "They're beautiful, Julia," he said, his voice thick with unshed tears. "You've done an amazing job." "I had no choice," she replied, her voice flat again. "But yes, they are amazing kids." Connor swallowed the lump in his throat. He had to say it. He had to ask. "I want to meet them, properly." Julia crossed her arms, a protective barrier over her heart. Why? Why now, after 15 years of silence? Why show up now and detonate a bomb in the middle of the life I have painstakingly built for them? "Because I was wrong," Connor admitted, the words tearing from his soul. His corporate armor was gone, stripped away by the raw truth of her gaze. He was just a man, exposed and broken. So terribly, unforgivably wrong. "I've built an empire, Julia. I have everything I ever thought I wanted, and I've never been happy. Not for a single day, not really. And seeing Times You asterisk, I realize what I threw away. It wasn't a complication. It was everything." Julia studied him, her eyes searching his for a hint of insincerity, for the master manipulator he had become in the business world. But there was no manipulation left in him, only a vast, desolate landscape of regret. The door to the community center creaked open, and all 4 teenagers spilled out onto the porch, their attempts at staying away having clearly failed. "Mom," said Noah, his stance protective as he stepped slightly in front of her. He was clearly the spokesman. "We couldn't help overhearing. Is he really our father?" Julia sighed, a long, weary sound, and shot Connor a look that said, clear as day, "You broke it. You fix it." Connor took a deep breath, turning to face the 4 pairs of green eyes that were now fixed on him with a mixture of shock, anger, and dawning comprehension. "Yes," he said, his voice raw. "I am your father, though I know I haven't earned the right to that title." He looked at each of them in turn, his heart aching with the weight of 15 lost years. "My name is Connor Hamilton, and I am so sorry that I haven't been here." "The Connor Hamilton?" asked Lucas, the stockier boy. His eyes, which had been wary, now widened with a flicker of awe. "The Tech Fusion CEO?" Connor nodded, a wave of shame washing over him. His fame felt like another layer of his failure. "Cool," Lucas breathed, then quickly tempered his enthusiasm at a sharp glance from his mother. Ava, the quietest of the 4, who had been hanging back, studied Connor with searching, intelligent eyes. She was the one who asked the simplest, most devastating question. "Why did you leave us?" The question, so direct and innocent, hit Connor like a physical blow. He owed them the truth. The ugly, unvarnished truth. "I was scared," he admitted, his voice cracking. "And I was selfish. I was a young man who thought building a company was the most important thing in the world. I thought success was measured in stock prices and market share." He risked a glance at Julia, his eyes pleading for an understanding he didn't deserve. "I was wrong." Mia, the daughter who looked so much like her mother, stepped forward. Her arms were crossed, mirroring Julia's defensive posture. "So, are you back now? Like, for good? Or is this just a quick visit before you fly off to your next big deal?" The question was laced with teenage cynicism, but it was fair. "That's not for me to decide." Connor replied carefully, his gaze sweeping over all of them, but landing finally on Julia. "That depends on your mother, and on all of you." Julia's expression remained guarded, but something in her eyes, a flicker of something he couldn't name, had shifted. She looked at the 4 expectant faces of her children, and a silent internal battle seemed to wage within her. "Perhaps," she said finally, her voice careful and measured, "we could start with dinner tomorrow night. At our house." She looked at her children, giving them the power she had never had. "If that's what you all want." 4 heads, after a moment of shared, silent communication, nodded in unison. Some were hesitant, some were curious, but all agreed. "I'd be honored," Connor said, the relief so profound it almost buckled his knees. As he prepared to leave, a fragile truce hanging in the air, Noah approached him awkwardly. "So, should we call you Dad? Or—" The question was another knife to the heart. "You can call me Connor for now," he replied gently. "I need to earn Dad." He exchanged contact information with Julia, his fingers clumsy, as he typed her number into his phone. He promised to arrive at 6 o'clock the next evening. As his car pulled away from the curb, Connor looked back at the 5 figures standing on the porch, the family he never knew he had, the life he had thrown away. Tears finally blurred his vision, hot and shameful. Michael navigated the car back toward the gleaming towers of the city center, the silence thick with unspoken questions. "Are you all right, sir?" Michael asked finally, his concern evident in his voice. "No," Connor replied honestly, his voice choked with emotion. "But I think for the first time in 15 years, I might be heading in the right direction." The next 24 hours were the longest of Connor Hamilton's life. He sat through a rescheduled board meeting, his mind a million miles away. His executives presented charts and projections, speaking of market penetration and quarterly growth, and all Connor could see were 4 faces, all with his eyes. He was a stranger in his own life. That evening, he didn't go to one of the city's finest restaurants. He went to a toy store, then a bookstore, then an electronics store, feeling like an alien visitor. What do 15-year-olds like? He had no idea. He spent hours selecting gifts, agonizing over each choice. A high-end drone for Noah, who looked like he needed to fly. A sophisticated coding kit for Lucas, the boy who recognized his name. A pair of top-of-the-line wireless headphones for Mia, the girl with the guarded musical soul. And for Ava, the quiet observer, a professional-grade digital art tablet. He stared at the wrapped packages in his passenger seat. Would they see these as genuine gestures? Or as what they were, transparent, desperate attempts to buy his way back into their lives? He also stopped at a small florist shop, the kind he used to frequent when he and Julia were young and broke and deeply in love. Lilies, he told the florist, a bouquet of white lilies. He remembered they were her favorite. He prayed she did too. At 5:55 p.m., he was parked outside a modest, two-story house on a quiet, tree-lined street. It was a home, a real home, with bicycles in the driveway and a slightly crooked basketball hoop over the garage. It was everything his penthouse was not. He clutched the flowers and the 4 packages, his hands sweating. After 15 years of absence, being precisely on time seemed desperately important. The front door opened before he even reached the walkway. Ava stood in the entryway, a sketchbook in her hand. Up close, he could see the light dusting of freckles across her nose, just like Julia's. "Hi," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "Mom's finishing dinner." "Thank you, Ava," Connor replied, his own voice tight. He offered her the bouquet. "Could you give these to your mother for me?" Ava took them, her small, shy smile reaching her eyes for a fleeting second before she disappeared into the house. Connor stepped inside, into the life he had forfeited. The air smelled of garlic bread and something delicious, something that smelled like home. The house felt lived in and warm. The walls were a chronicle of the 15 years he'd missed. Children's artwork framed and hung with care. School awards, sports trophies, and handmade crafts lining the shelves. His throat tightened as his eyes landed on a framed photo on the mantel. 4 gap-toothed 7-year-olds, their faces smeared with chocolate frosting, blowing out the candles on a single large cake. 7 birthdays, he whispered to himself, the words a hollow ache in his chest. 15 Christmases, 60 report cards. 4 first steps, came Julia's voice from behind him. 4 first words. 4 cases of chickenpox, all at the same time. He turned. She stood in the doorway to the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Ava was beside her, arranging the lilies in a vase, her face glowing with a pleasure that made Connor's heart clench. Julia's tone was neutral, not cold, but not warm either. It was the voice of a woman stating facts. "Julia, He started, but he had no words to finish the sentence. "Dinner's ready," she interrupted, saving him. "Kids, table." Thundering footsteps from upstairs announced the arrival of the other 3. Lucas bounded down the stairs, his eyes immediately landing on the packages in Connor's arms. "Whoa, presents?" Julia raised an eyebrow. "Connor, you didn't need to do this." "I wanted to," he said simply, his voice low. "Though, I know gifts can't make up for lost time." Dinner was homemade lasagna. He remembered it was her specialty, the one she made for special occasions. The conversation started awkwardly, a minefield of long pauses and uncertain glances. Connor felt more scrutinized than he ever had in front of a hostile board. Finally, Noah broke the silence, his tone still wary. "So, you make computers or something?" Connor managed a small smile. "Something like that. My company, Tech Fusion, develops software and technology solutions. We started with mobile apps, but now we work on larger systems." "Like what?" Lucas leaned forward, his earlier awe returning, his fork forgotten. This, at least, was a subject Connor understood. "Like the operating system in your school's computer lab," he replied, "and the security protocols that protect online banking." Lucas's eyes widened. "That's actually pretty cool." "Is that why you left?" Mia asked, her question as sharp and direct as a shard of glass. "Because you were too busy making all that stuff?" The table fell silent. The clinking of silverware stopped. Julia looked poised to intervene, but Connor gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of his head. He had to face this. He had to answer every painful question. "No, Mia," he answered, his voice heavy with the weight of his honesty. "I left because I was afraid. I was young, and I wasn't ready to be a father. And I convinced myself that my work was more important than my family." He met Julia's eyes for a brief, painful moment. It was the biggest mistake of my life. After dinner, the gift opening broke some of the tension. Lucas was ecstatic with the coding kit, immediately firing questions at Connor about Python and C++. Noah's reserve cracked when he saw the drone, a flicker of genuine excitement in his eyes. Even Ava gave a small, real smile as she traced the surface of the art tablet. Only Mia remained aloof. She thanked him politely for the headphones but set them aside, her expression unreadable. It was a clear message. He couldn't buy her forgiveness. He respected that. Later, the excited voices of the kids testing the drone in the backyard drifted through the open kitchen window. Julia and Connor stood at the sink, washing dishes in a weighted silence. "They're amazing kids," Connor said finally, his voice thick with admiration. "They are," Julia agreed, her voice softer now. "They're smart, and kind, and resilient. They get that from you." Julia handed him a plate to dry. "The stubbornness is all you," she said, a hint of a smile in her voice. "Especially Noah." Connor smiled, then his expression grew serious again. "Julia, I know I have no right to ask this. None at all. But I want to be a part of their lives. In whatever capacity you and they are comfortable with. I'll do whatever it takes." Julia stopped washing and stared out the window at their children, at the 4 lives she had nurtured, from infancy to adolescence, all on her own. The setting sun cast long shadows across the yard, and for a moment her shoulders seemed to slump with the weight of 15 solitary years. "They deserve to know their father," she said finally, turning back to him. Her eyes were hard again, but it was the hardness of a diamond, forged under immense pressure. "But Connor, I need to be absolutely clear. If you start this, you cannot walk away again." She put down the sponge and faced him fully, her hands on her hips. "Their hearts are not a startup you can abandon if it doesn't show immediate returns. You will not be a weekend diversion. You will show up for scraped knees and bad dreams and parent-teacher conferences you don't want to go to. You will be consistent, or you will be gone. There is no middle ground. They've grown up without you. They've managed. They've thrived. But if you come into their lives now, make them love you, and then disappear when it gets difficult or inconvenient. If you break their hearts, I will never, ever forgive you." Connor listened to every word, letting each one sink in. He didn't flinch. He didn't make excuses. He just nodded, his throat tight. "I won't," he promised, his voice a raw oath. "I have spent 15 years chasing a ghost. I finally understand what really matters. I will not walk away, ever." Julia studied him, weighing the sincerity in his eyes, searching for the man he was versus the man he could be. "We'll take it slow," she decided, her voice firm. "Weekend visits. Maybe a dinner during the week. We'll see how it goes." It was more than he deserved. It was a lifeline. "Thank you, Julia," he said, his voice thick with a gratitude so profound it was painful. "Thank you." Connor is taking his first steps on a long road, but trust isn't built in a day, and the wounds of 15 years run deep. What do you think is the hardest part of earning forgiveness after so long? Share your thoughts and your wisdom in the comments below. We love hearing from you. And if you're invested in this journey of redemption, don't forget to subscribe to Cedar Drama for the rest of the story. In the following weeks, Connor Hamilton began the painstaking process of dismantling his old life and building a new one. He restructured his entire world around his newfound family. He delegated massive responsibilities at work, empowering his COO in a way he never had before. He scheduled board meetings around school events and turned down business trips that would have once been the highlight of his quarter. His executive assistant, Marissa, a sharp woman in her late 20s who had been with him for 3 years, watched these changes with baffled curiosity. "You're turning down the keynote speech at the Seoul conference?" she asked one afternoon, her tablet in hand. "Mr. Hamilton, that's the biggest tech summit in Asia. Your speech was supposed to be the main event." "Family commitment, Marissa," Connor replied simply, his attention focused on the new items on his desk. He was carefully placing 4 silver frames. He straightened a picture of Noah mid-kick on the soccer field, a blur of motion and determination. He smiled at a photo of Lucas holding up a complex robot he had built. He adjusted a frame, holding a candid shot of Mia, lost in thought with her headphones on. Finally, he centered a picture of a stunning charcoal drawing Ava had made of the family dog, a scruffy terrier mix named Buster. Marissa's eyes widened, her gaze fixed on the photos. "Since when do you have?" "It's a long story," Connor said, a genuine, unforced smile reaching his eyes. 15 years long, actually. Connecting with each of the quadruplets was like learning 4 new, complex languages. Lucas was the easiest. He was hungry for knowledge, eager to learn about the world of technology and entrepreneurship that his father commanded. He bombarded Connor with questions about software development, venture capital, and the future of artificial intelligence. "Could you teach me Python?" he asked one Saturday morning, his eyes bright with excitement. "I want to build apps, like you did." Connor, who hadn't written a line of code himself in over a decade, found himself spending the entire weekend with Lucas. They cleared out a corner of Lucas's bedroom and created a makeshift coding lab. At first, Connor's CEO instincts took over. He called an assistant to order the best equipment, to have it delivered and set up. "I can plug in a monitor, you know," Lucas said, a hint of an edge to his voice. "I don't need a team of people to do it for me." Connor stopped, humbled. He was trying to be a father, not a boss. He canceled the order and drove with Lucas to the electronics store. They spent hours comparing processors and graphics cards. Connor let Lucas make the final decisions. Back home, they assembled the computer together, their heads bent over the motherboard, a tangle of wires and shared purpose between them. It was the most satisfying project Connor had worked on in years. Noah was a tougher nut to crack. His trust was a high wall Connor had to learn to scale. He was fiercely protective of Julia and saw Connor as an intruder. Connor discovered Noah's passion was soccer, and he began attending every one of his games, standing on the sidelines, often alone, a world away from the other parents who had known each other for years. At the first game, he made the mistake of shouting instructions from the sideline. "Watch the wing, Noah! Close him down." Noah shot him a look of pure fury from the field. After the game, which they lost, Noah stalked past him without a word. The next game, Connor said nothing. He just watched. He saw Noah's frustration, his passion, his natural leadership on the field. He saw the way he encouraged his teammates and the way his face fell when a play went wrong. He just watched his son. Near the end of the second half, Noah scored a spectacular goal, a powerful strike from outside the box that sailed into the top corner of the net. The crowd of parents erupted, and Connor found himself yelling, cheering, his fists in the air, a purely joyful and instinctual reaction. At halftime, as the team was grabbing water, Noah jogged over, his face flushed, trying to appear casual. "Did you see that?" "Did I see it?" Connor replied, his own face beaming with a pride that was fierce and paternal. "The footwork was incredible. You completely outmaneuvered that defender. It was a world-class goal, Noah." A small, surprised smile tugged at the corner of Noah's lips. It was the first genuine one he had ever directed at Connor. "Yeah, it was pretty good." It was a start, a tiny crack in the wall. And for Connor, it felt like winning the world. Mia was the fortress. She connected with Connor through music, but only on her own terms. He had purchased top-quality recording equipment for her bedroom, a peace offering she accepted with a cool, polite thank you. But she never invited him to listen. The door to her room remained closed, a silent boundary he knew he must not cross. One evening, he was passing her room on the way to say goodnight to the others, and he heard it, a melody, delicate and haunting, being picked out on an acoustic guitar. And then her voice, clear and raw, and full of a pain that stunned him. The song was a ballad, an angry, beautiful elegy about a girl who built a fortress around her heart, brick by painful brick, because her father was a ghost, a whisper in a story she was told she should forget. Connor stood frozen in the hallway, his hand on the wall, the lyrics piercing him. He was the ghost. He was the whisper. He wanted to knock, to explain, to apologize, but he knew that would be a violation. It would be about his guilt, not her pain. So he just listened until the last, heartbreaking chord faded into silence. The next day, as she was leaving for a music lesson, he stopped her. He didn't mention he'd overheard. He just said, "Mia, I know I don't know much about songwriting, but I know that telling the truth is the most important part of any creation. Your mother told me you write, and I just want you to know, whatever your truth is, it's valid and it's powerful." Mia stared at him, her eyes searching his for any hint of a trap. She saw only a quiet, sad sincerity. She said nothing. She just gave a single, sharp nod and left. But later that week, for the first time, her bedroom door was left just slightly ajar while she practiced. It was an invitation, however small, and it meant everything. Ava remained the most elusive, a quiet moon orbiting the brighter suns of her siblings. She was watchful and silent, her sketchbook, her only confidant. Connor noticed her incredible talent for art, but every attempt he made to talk about it was met with shy, one-word answers. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. One evening, after the others had gone to bed, he found her in the living room, a large piece of paper on the coffee table. She was sketching the intricate facade of a historic building downtown, but she was struggling, erasing and redrawing the complex angles, her brow furrowed in frustration. Connor sat on the couch, not too close, just observing. "The perspective is tricky on that one," he said softly. She jumped, startled. "I can't get the vanishing point right." A forgotten part of Connor's own past stirred. Before business school, before the ruthless ambition took hold, he had loved to draw. He had taken drafting classes in college. He picked up a spare pencil. "May I?" Ava nodded hesitantly. Instead of telling her what to do, he took a fresh sheet of paper and, with a few swift, confident lines, he sketched the basic principles of three-point perspective. He didn't speak. He just drew, showing her how the lines converged, how the illusion of depth was created. It was a silent, shared language. Ava watched, her eyes wide with understanding. She took the pencil back and applied the principle to her own drawing. The building suddenly snapped into place, solid and real on the page. She finally met his gaze, a genuine, dazzling smile transforming her face. "How did you know how to do that?" "I used to love to draw," he admitted, a wave of nostalgia washing over him. "A long, long time ago." Ava looked from her drawing to him, a new connection forged between them. "Mom says I get that from you," she replied, her voice soft. "She says you always notice things other people miss." Connor felt a surge of emotion so strong it almost choked him. She remembers that about me?" Ava finally looked him straight in the eye, her gaze clear and direct. "She remembers everything about you." She paused, then added, "She kept all your letters." Connor's brow furrowed. "Letters? Ava, I never sent any letters." Ava's expression shifted to one of pure confusion. "But there's a box in her closet. It has your name on it." The conversation haunted Connor for days, a box of letters he never wrote. During their next family dinner, while the children were clearing the table and arguing good-naturedly over whose turn it was to load the dishwasher, he quietly asked Julia about it. "Ava mentioned some letters," he said carefully, his voice low. "From me. But I don't understand." "They weren't from you," Julia interrupted, her cheeks flushing slightly as she stacked plates. "They were times to times you." Connor's heart constricted. "What?" "Letters," she said, her back to him now. "Letters I wrote, but never sent. Especially during that first year." The air grew thick with the ghosts of things unsaid. He could feel the weight of that box, a Pandora's box, of her pain and his failure, sitting in a dark closet upstairs. Would you let me read them?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Julia hesitated, her hand stilling over the sink. He saw the vulnerability flash across her face, the deep-seated instinct to protect her own scars. "They're private, Connor. I was angry and heartbroken and completely overwhelmed with 4 newborns. It's not pretty." "I understand," he nodded, his own heart aching for her, for the pain he was only just beginning to comprehend. He wouldn't push. He had no right. I thought they might help me understand what you went through." Later that evening, as Connor was preparing to leave, his heart heavy with the conversation, Julia came down the stairs. In her hands was a small, simple wooden box. "Just the first few," she said quietly, her voice fragile. She wouldn't meet his eyes. "The others, they're too personal. My now." She handed him the box. It felt heavier than any corporate ledger, more valuable than any stock certificate. It was the missing piece of his life. That night, sleep was not an option. Connor sat in his sterile penthouse, the city lights twinkling indifferently below, and he opened the box. Her beautiful, familiar handwriting, now a testament to the hardest year of her life, covered page after page. He began to read. Asterisk, Dear Connor, asterisk. Asterisk, the babies came early. All 4 of them. They're so small, so perfect. 4 tiny humans, and every single one of them has your eyes. The doctors say they're healthy, despite being so little. I named them Noah, Mia, Lucas, and Ava. I wish you could see them, Connor. I wish you wanted to see them. Asterisk. He had to stop, his vision blurring. He wiped his eyes and continued. Asterisk, Dear Connor, asterisk. Asterisk, Lucas smiled today. A real smile, not just gas. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I caught myself reaching for the phone to tell you, my thumb hovering over your name, before I remembered you chose not to be a part of this. The joy feels so sharp, but the loneliness that comes with it is even sharper. Asterisk. Asterisk, Dear Connor, asterisk. Asterisk, it's 3 a.m. All 4 of them are crying at once. I've fed them, changed them, burped them. I don't know what else to do. I haven't slept for more than 2 hours straight in weeks. My mother helps when she can, but she's getting older. I'm so tired I can barely see straight. There are moments, in the dark like this, when I understand why you left. When I want to leave, too. And then I hate myself for it. And I hate you for making me feel this way. Asterisk. Tears streamed down Connor's face, dripping onto his expensive suit. He read about her struggles, her small triumphs, her profound, soul-crushing loneliness. He read about Mia's colic, Noah's first fever, Ava's quiet intensity even as an infant. He read about her pride, her fear, her anger, and the moments her love for her children was the only thing that kept her from shattering into a million pieces. He didn't just read the letters. He lived them. He felt the weight of her exhaustion, the chill of her fear. The man who built an empire of logic and code was drowned in a sea of emotion he had never allowed himself to feel. The sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gray. When he finished the last letter in the box, he was a different man. The Connor Hamilton who had entered the penthouse the night before was gone, burned away by the righteous fire of Julia's words. He didn't shower. He didn't change. He drove, breaking every speed limit, back to her house. It was 6:30 in the morning when he knocked on her door, his eyes red-rimmed from crying and lack of sleep. Julia opened the door in her bathrobe, a mug of coffee in her hand, her face a mask of surprise. "Connor, it's 6:30 in the morning. What's wrong?" "I read them," he said, his voice raw with an emotion so powerful it was almost unrecognizable. "Julia, I had no idea. I had no idea what you went through, what I put you through. It was a long time ago," she said softly, but her own eyes glistened with unshed tears. "It doesn't matter," he said, his voice breaking. "I am so sorry. And not just, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't there when Lucas had his first fever and you were terrified. I'm sorry you had to face 4 crying babies alone at 3 a.m. while I was probably sleeping in a luxury hotel somewhere. I'm sorry I stole your joy and left you with only the struggle. I'm sorry. For every single second of the last 15 years, I am so sorry." Julia's composure, the strong, unbreakable wall she had built around her heart for a decade and a half, finally wavered. A single tear escaped and traced a path down her cheek. Then another. For the first time since his return, she allowed herself to cry in front of him. Connor hesitantly, gently, reached out, and when she didn't pull away, He wrapped his arms around her. She felt so fragile in his arms, yet he knew she was the strongest person he had ever met. She sobbed against his chest, 15 years of stored-up pain and grief and anger finally being released. And he held her, the morning sun washing over them in the doorway, as 15 years of wounds began, ever so slightly, to heal. That apology, born from a true understanding of her pain, was the turning point. It didn't fix everything, but it cleared the ground. It allowed them to start building something new. A few weeks later, that new foundation was put to the test. Connor received an urgent call from Julia while he was in a meeting. Lucas had been in a fight at school. He was suspended for 3 days. Connor canceled his afternoon and rushed to the house. He found Lucas sulking on the front porch, a bruise already darkening his cheekbone. "What happened?" Connor asked, sitting beside his son. Lucas shrugged, refusing to meet his eyes, his jaw set stubbornly. "He won't tell me either," Julia said from the doorway, her arms crossed, her face a mixture of anger and worry. The principal said Lucas threw the first punch, completely unprovoked. Connor studied his son's posture. It was defensive, embarrassed, but also righteous. "Everyone else gone?" he asked Julia. She nodded. "Noah has soccer practice. The girls have choir." "Mind if Lucas and I take a drive?" Connor asked. Julia hesitated, then agreed. "Dinner's at 6. In the car, Lucas maintained his stubborn silence. Connor drove without a destination, letting the quiet stretch. "Fighting isn't like you," Connor observed casually after several minutes. "From what I've seen, must have been about something serious." Lucas stared out the window. "How would you know what's like me?" he shot back, his voice laced with sudden venom. "You've been around for what? 2 months?" The accusation stung, but Connor knew it was fair. "You're right. Fair point. I'm still learning who you are. But your mother says you've never been in a single fight at school before." Lucas's jaw worked as he wrestled with his anger. Finally, it burst out of him. "It was Ryan Hutchins. He said you only came back because Mom must have blackmailed you. He said you probably weren't even our real dad and that Mom was just a gold digger trying to get your money." Connor pulled the car over into an empty parking lot and shut off the engine. He turned to face his son, his own anger a cold, hard knot in his stomach. "And you hit him for that." "Wouldn't you?" Lucas challenged, his green eyes, so like Connor's, flashing with indignation. Connor thought for a moment. The CEO in him would have crushed the boy's father's company. The man he was trying to become took a different path. "Probably," he admitted, surprising Lucas. But not because what he said was true, because it was so completely, utterly false. He turned fully toward Lucas, his voice low and intense. "Listen to me, Lucas. No one forced me to come back. No one blackmailed me. The minute I learned about you and your siblings, I knew I had to be here. I knew I had missed the most important part of my life, and I would spend every day I have left trying to make up for it. That is the truth. Your mother is the most honorable, incredible woman I have ever known, and she has never asked me for a single cent." "Then why did you leave in the first place?" Lucas demanded, the question that lay beneath all the others. "If we mattered so much." Connor took a deep breath. He owed him the real answer. "Because I was a coward," he said, the words tasting like ash. "I was young, I was scared, and I was incredibly selfish. When your mother told me she was pregnant, all I could think about was how it would derail my ambitions, my company, my future. I convinced myself I was doing what was best for everyone by walking away." He met Lucas's gaze directly, holding nothing back. "I was wrong, catastrophically wrong. And I have missed 15 years of your life that I can never, ever get back. And I will regret that until the day I die." Lucas absorbed this, some of his anger deflating, replaced by a dawning understanding. "Mom struggled a lot," he said quietly. "When we were little, she worked 2 jobs. Our grandma had to move in with us to help." Each word was a fresh knife in Connor's heart. "I know," he said, his voice thick. "I am so sorry, Lucas. I can't change the past. But I promise you, I am here now. For good." Lucas studied his father's face, looking for the corporate mask, the deception. and finding only raw, honest regret. "I believe you," he said finally. Then he added, a hint of a smile touching his lips, "And I'm still not sorry I punched Ryan." Connor suppressed a smile of his own. "Violence isn't the answer, Lucas. But standing up for your family? That I understand completely." He started the car. "How about we stop for ice cream before we head home? And maybe we don't mention the part about me understanding why you punched him to your mother." Lucas grinned, the first completely unguarded, happy smile he had ever given his father. Deal. As autumn deepened, the Hope Haven project became a symbol of their family's healing. Connor had purchased the vacant building next door and donated it to the center, setting up a trust in the children's names to fund the renovation and ongoing maintenance. The project attracted positive media, but with it came complications. One morning, Julia arrived at the construction site, a newspaper clutched in her hand, her face stormy. "Have you seen this?" she demanded. The article featured a large photo of Connor with Julia and the quadruplets, under the headline, "Tech Billionaire Funds Community Center in honor of his lost and found children." "I did," he replied carefully. "The publicity should help with fundraising." "It's not about the article, Connor. It's about the online comments. People are speculating about us, about our relationship. The kids are getting messages from strangers on social media." Connor paled. "I never considered that. I'm so sorry, Julia." "Noah came home yesterday asking if we were getting back together," she continued, her frustration clear. "Apparently, his classmates have been teasing him, asking if he's going to be a billionaire heir now." Connor ran a hand through his hair, his own naivety infuriating him. "What did you tell him?" Julia's expression softened. "I told him that we're figuring things out, that families come in all shapes and sizes." "Are we?" Connor asked quietly. "Figuring things out?" Before she could answer, Noah and Mia burst in, their faces alight with an excitement that contrasted sharply with the tension in the room. "Did you see the news?" Noah exclaimed, "They're calling Dad a philanthropic tech geniuses." He used the word dad casually, naturally, a term all four of them had gradually, in their own time, adopted over the past months. "And my music teacher wants me to compose an original piece for the grand opening ceremony," Mia added, her usual cynicism completely gone. Julia's frustration visibly melted away in the face of her children's happiness. Later, as they walked through the nearly completed building, she murmured to Connor, "We need to be more careful. I want to protect them." "Absolutely," Connor agreed. "I'll have my PR team kill the family angle, redirect all attention to the center's mission." Julia gave him a sidelong glance. "Is that what this is? A family?" Connor stopped walking. He turned to her, the noise of construction fading into the background. "What would you call it?" "I don't know," Julia admitted, her voice soft. "Sometimes it feels like co-parenting. And sometimes it feels like something more." The air between them charged with unspoken possibility. The grand opening of the Hope Haven expansion fell on a crisp December evening. The facility was beautiful, a testament to what they had built together. Connor intentionally stayed in the background, letting the spotlight shine on Julia and the children. He watched from the sidelines as Mia's beautiful, hopeful composition played, as Ava's vibrant murals were unveiled, as Lucas proudly demonstrated the new computer lab, and as Noah organized a gleeful, chaotic basketball game in the new gym. As the evening wound down, he found Julia, alone in the new art studio, admiring Ava's centerpiece mural, a magnificent tree, its roots deep in the earth, with 4 strong, intertwined branches reaching for the sky. "You've been extraordinary these past months, Connor," Julia said softly, turning to face him. "The way you've connected with each of them, it's more than I ever expected." "They make it easy to love them," Connor replied. "You raised 4 incredible human beings, Julia." He moved closer to her. "Finding you all? It was the greatest gift I never deserved." "I used to hate you," she admitted, her voice a whisper. "But watching you become the man I always knew you could be, I've realized something." She took a deep, steadying breath. "I never completely stopped loving the man I married. I just buried those feelings under a mountain of anger and hurt." Connor's heart stuttered. "Julia, I'm not saying I'm ready to pick up where we left off. she clarified, her gaze unwavering. Too much has happened. But I think I'm open to the possibility of something new, something based on who we are now. The family is finally coming together, and a new chapter is about to begin. If you believe Connor has finally earned his second chance at happiness, type "he's home" in the comments. We're almost at the end of this incredible journey. Connor gently took her hands in his. That's more than I could ever hope for. Their moment was joyfully interrupted by the quadruplets bursting in, chattering with excitement. Dad, Mom, did you see how many people signed up for Lucas's coding class? As the 5 people he loved most in the world surrounded him, Connor felt a sense of completeness he'd never known. His empire of glass and steel felt like a pale imitation of this noisy, messy, beautiful, vibrant thing. This was wealth. This was success. This was home. Christmas morning arrived with a blanket of fresh snow, muffling the world in a pristine, quiet beauty. Connor, who had rented a house just 2 blocks away, arrived early, his arms full of gifts. The living room glowed with the soft, multicolored lights from the tree. When all the children's presents had been opened, Noah handed Connor a large, flat, awkwardly wrapped package. This is from all of us, he said, suddenly shy. Mom helped, but it was our idea. Connor unwrapped it carefully. It was a large, handcrafted wooden frame. Inside was a collage of photographs, a visual history of the 15 years he had missed. First steps, first days of school, birthdays, holidays, sports games, music recitals, art shows. And in the very center, a recent family portrait of all 6 of them, taken at the Hope Haven opening. Across the bottom, in Ava's beautiful calligraphy, were the words, asterisk, the past we shared without you, the future we'll build together. Asterisk. Connor couldn't speak. He couldn't breathe. Tears streamed down his face, but for the first time in his life, they were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. He simply opened his arms, and all 4 of his children crowded in for a group hug that felt like the mending of a broken bone, a healing of the soul. Later, as the kids were occupied with their new gifts, Connor found Julia in the kitchen doorway. She slipped her hand into his. Maybe it's not about deserving second chances, she said softly. Maybe it's about recognizing what matters and choosing it every single day. He squeezed her hand. I choose this. All of you. Every day. Above them, a sprig of mistletoe had been strategically hung. Mia's work, no doubt, Julia murmured with a smile. Connor followed her gaze, then looked back down at her, a question in his eyes. She nodded, almost imperceptibly, and he leaned down and kissed her. It was a gentle, tender kiss, a promise of 1,000 more to come. A cheer erupted from the living room. They turned to find all 4 teenagers watching them, with varying expressions of delight and mock disgust. Finally, Mia exclaimed. Gross. Noah groaned, but he was smiling. Lucas just raised an eyebrow. Statistically speaking, this outcome was inevitable. Ava simply beamed, her quiet happiness speaking volumes. Surrounded by his family, his arm around Julia, Connor marveled at how his life had transformed. It wasn't perfect, there were still scars. But it was real, and it was his. 1 year later, the Hamilton Parker household bustled with the chaotic energy of a happy family. They had bought a new house together, a warm, welcoming home with a sprawling backyard. Spring sunshine streamed through the windows as Connor, now a master of the craft, flipped chocolate chip pancakes. The past year had seen them truly become a family, and it had seen his children flourish. Lucas had just been accepted to MIT, Connor's alma mater. Noah was being scouted by top universities for his soccer talent. Mia's music had won a Young Composers Award, attracting the attention of Juilliard. And Ava, portfolio in hand, was heading to an interview at her dream school, the Rhode Island School of Design. Connor looked around the kitchen at his vibrant, brilliant children, and a wave of gratitude so powerful it nearly overwhelmed him, washed over him. He caught Julia's eye, and she smiled, feeling the exact same thing. Later that afternoon, they sat on the back porch swing, watching the quadruplets play a noisy game of 2-on-2 basketball. They'll all be gone next fall, Julia murmured, her head on his shoulder. Different cities, different schools. They'll come home, Connor assured her. This is their foundation now, our foundation. He turned to her, his smile gentle. And us? What will we do with an empty nest? Julia's eyes twinkled. Well, I have been offered the director position at Hope Haven, and I know you've been considering stepping back from day-to-day operations at Tech Fusion. I have, he confirmed. And, she continued, her voice soft, I was thinking, the foster care system always needs good homes. We have love to give, and experience. Connor felt his heart expand with a love so profound it was breathtaking. He pulled her close. Julia Parker Hamilton, I think that sounds absolutely perfect. As he stood there, his arm around the love of his life, watching his incredible children laugh in the afternoon sun, Connor Hamilton knew with absolute certainty that he was the richest man in the world. He had walked away from a treasure 15 years ago, a terrified boy chasing shadows. But fate, and the unwavering love of a remarkable woman, had given him a second chance. He hadn't just found his family. He had found his way home. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs a little hope. And subscribe to Cedar Drama for more powerful stories about love, forgiveness, and finding your way home. What life lesson did you take from Connor's journey? Let us know in the comments. Until next time, stay blessed.